so far we've been doing everything in main. PSVM. Here we go. There's your main method. Notice that I called it the main method. Method of what? Well, methods are just Java's way of writing something called a function or a procedure or a subprogram. But the main method simply contains the starting point for all our programs. However, if I wanted to, the issue here with just doing everything main is that main will get huge. So we need a better way to organize our large programs. And we do that by writing methods. So I'm going to there's two types of methods, static methods and instance methods. We'll learn more about instance methods on week 3. But here, we want to learn about static methods. So static methods start out with usually public static. They always contain the word static. And then we have something over here called the return type. We'll put void because the method I'm writing won't return anything. And then I'm going to do something called print5, which is going to take in a string. And we are just simply going to print it 5 times. For int I is equal to 0. Oh, let's go ahead and actually make it simpler. I'll then complicate it with a for loop. So, sout s, and then the wonders of Control-C, Control-V. Right. So now we've got that. So what we've done is essentially we've written a new method, which is really cool. Just like you can add variables, you can also, new nouns. You can also add new commands, new verbs to your program, right? Java, what makes this basically more powerful than just a calculator is that you can basically update the language and create your own commands that you need as needed. So let's go ahead and test out this command we just wrote. Print 5. Let's go ahead. Whoop, here we go. Nice alert there. So print 5. Echo. And it prints it 5 times, right? So what it did is, so let's just go ahead and go into this in detail. What we did is that, first off, this doesn't actually exist. If you get close to the screen and notice, it's slightly grayed out. It's also not in monospaced font. This is a feature of the IntelliJ IDE, where it basically is reminding me that echo is being passed in as S. This doesn't actually mean anything. You can't actually type it. Notice if I type something over here, it just starts going a bit nuts. So notice there's not actually anything there. Okay, it's just a helper thing. So that what it's saying here is that print5, we're calling the print5 method, print5 function. You're going to hear me use those terms interchangeably. And we're passing it echo. And what's that doing is that it is taking the memory location of echo and passing it into here. So S becomes echo for the sake of running print5. So we print out S, 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 S. So we print out 5 S's. Right? So we just we just print out S 5 times. Let's go ahead and try this over here. String S is equal to hello. So we're going to print 5 hello, and then we're going to print 5 S. We do echo, 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 hello, 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 which is the most intuitive choice. There's a principle called, the principle of least surprise, which means that, programming languages should essentially be as unsurprising as possible in their behaviors. So what this happened is that we passed the memory address of echo into it for the first 5, and then we passed the memory address that was stored in S over here for the second set of print 5, which printed 5 hellos because hello was S was storing the memory location of hello. And notice that we have an S here and an S in the other method. These are entirely different S's, just like if you're doing math homework, that the X in one problem and the X in another problem are entirely different X's, right? So here, what we're doing is just passing it into this new problem, essentially saying, set this to hello, set this to echo. More specifically, what we're doing is we're copying the memory location over. Why do we do this whole copying the memory location over? Well, Java's a pass by copy language, which means we copy whatever inside this variable. Here's a memory location. If it was an integer, we'd be copying the value that was stored in that integer. And the reason that is, again, we don't know how big this string is going to be. This string could be, again, the entire works of William Shakespeare, which is 5 megabytes. So if we were to copy the actual contents into here, as opposed to the memory address is like 32 bits. It's 4 bytes. It's a small amount of data, easy transfer. On the other hand, if we were copying the contents, which could be huge, it could be 5 megabytes, it could be 5 gigabytes, right? We'd be copying it over here to print it out 5 times. It's kind of useless to do that. So instead, we have this choice where we just copy the memory location through. Okay. So it's fairly straightforward to do methods. So other kind of methods are, let's go ahead and write a few other ones. Let's go ahead and do one that I really like. So public static Boolean is even, right? This one's fairly straightforward. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take in an int x. We're going to take in some integer, and we're going to and notice that basically it's already giving me an error. This is because we specified instead of void that this is a Boolean method, meaning it is going to return true or false. It's going to return a Boolean. So what I'll do over here is that I will just simply write return false. Okay, and now what I can do is that I can do the following. So Boolean answer is equal to is even 5. And of course it doesn't really do anything because I didn't tell it to do anything. So, ran it, but didn't print anything out because I didn't tell it to print anything out. So now if we print out our answer, great. Is even 5, great. It says it's false. Totally correct, right? But on the other hand, if I pass in 6, going to say that's false too. So just because you don't get an error, of course, doesn't mean that it's correct. Computer's an evil genie. It will do exactly what you tell it to do, and exactly that. Okay, so what we actually need to do is detect whether something even or odd, and we'll return true or false based on that. And then our answer will get stored. What we return, what does the return mean? That means pass back out. So what we can do is that we can call this, and we can store it in, and we can store the value we pass back out in answer, and then print it out. I'll go into more detail with something numeric, but this seemed fairly straightforward, right? How do we tell if something is even or odd? If x mod 2, there's that mod again, equals 0. So if x divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, that's what that means, right? If we can divide x by 2 and the remainder is 0, that means that 2 went cleanly into x. So that means that there was nothing left over when we divided by 2, which means that this number is an even number. So we return true. Else, return false. And there was actually a bit of superfluous stuff that we're doing over here, but that's fine for right now. But so if x is even, so if x mod 2 is 0, if x is cleanly divisible by 2, we return true. Otherwise, we return false. So now if we run this again, we will get true, which is what we'd expect to get for 6. And for 5, we will get false. Excellent. So, let's see. So, that's fairly straightforward. Now, there's a couple of shortcuts we can actually do over here. Because this is a Boolean expression, and if it's true, we're returning true, and if it's false, we're returning false, we can just simply make this one line, return x mod 2 equals is one thing. So we could do that and it'll work just fine, right? This will evaluate to true or false, and we just return that value. Another thing is that there's no need to store this answer, right? What we're doing is that we're calling it, we're getting is even, and is even is turning into true or false. But there's no need to do that. What we could do instead is that we can just directly print it out. Is even 5, which will print out false. So let's go over one more, basic one. Public static int. Now, I would call this double because what it's going to be doing is returning twice the value of what I put in, but I can't call it double. Why? Because doubles is what we call a reserved word, like or a keyword. Public static int double void, words that have special meaning in Java. So we can't really use those. So I'm just going to call it good old f, right? Just like f, which takes in a int x, and we will return 2 times x, right? So we'll take the value and it will return 2. So let's go ahead and see. So what we're going to do is we're going to say over here int x is equal to 5. Int y is equal to f of x, right? We're going to pass in x into this function and return twice the value, and we're going to print out x. We're going to print out y. Okay, and over here, what happens is that x, right, x's value is 5 and y's value is 10, right? We pass 5 in over to here, 5 gets copied over to here, and we return 5 times 2, which becomes 10. That return passes 10 back over to here, and the 10 gets stored in y. Nothing too scary there. So the question, of course, you should ask yourself is, if I instead do this, x is equal to x times 2, in other words, we double the value of x over here and store it in x, and then return x over here, right? That's still going to return 10, right? 5 times 2, store it in x, x becomes 10. But what gets printed out over here? It's still 5 and 10, okay? And the reason is, again, when we pass x into f of x, over here, we're passing in a copy. We're passing in what's inside x, which is 5, right? If it was a function, we'd be actually passing in the memory location. And then we'd actually kind of be working with the same thing. So overall, it is the same structure. It is the same concept over there. You just got to remember when we get into objects how that's going to work.